All right, guys, I think we have finally made it after a lot of backing out. No fault of their own. No fault of their own, but we have a little bit of a different lineup tonight than we were anticipating, but it's going to be a good conversation. So please help me in welcoming. We have Jake from Pokenomics and we have Captain Zach Sparrow. How's it going, fellas?
It's going good, man. It's going good. Happy to be here and to be able to talk with people. I'm just trying to pull up your channel right now so I can see the chat.
Oh yeah, yes. And by the way, guys, today is going to be a little bit different because unlike in the past for these roundtables where we typically bring topics to the table ourselves to discuss, we're going to leave it up to the audience tonight to let us know what they would like to hear us discuss. So you guys make sure to go ahead and put your questions, your topics into the chat, and then we will jump into those. But as I said, different lineup tonight. We had anticipated having Mason on from Cardinal Gaming. As you guys saw, he ended up doing the Fusion Strike early box opening tonight, which is really exciting. And then we also had Pokemon Radar, but he had a last-minute emergency that he had to attend to. But nonetheless, as I said, we've got Jake and we got Captain Zach here tonight, which will have a wonderful, wonderful conversation. So the first thing I want to ask is, what have you guys been up to? Well, Zach, we haven't actually had you on the podcast yet, but Jake, I'm interested to know what you guys have been up to recently. I'm sure a lot of the people out there in the community would like to know what's been on the agenda for the two of you.
You want to go first, Zach?
Sure. Yeah, I can. I don't know how you want us to do this, Pokenav, but what have we been up to, like, as far as investments,
anything at all, man? Pokemon world, life. I mean, it's been a wild year, to say the least. And so I'm just interested to know kind of what a day in the life of Captain Zach Sparrow is like right now. Probably more specifically about Pokemon, but in general, how you been?
Yeah, been good. Had a good workout today. More specifically for Pokemon, though, that's a great question. I think everyone's asking that right now. Everyone is kind of like, what's going to happen with the PSA returns? Like, how's that going to affect the market? Is now a good time to scoop up these lower prices on certain sealed product or slabs, or should we wait for something like that? So I have the same questions as probably everyone else does. I just happen to make videos about it, and I can be publicly shamed or praised for it if it turns out right or wrong. So right now I've got just as many questions as I do. Well, I've got more questions than I do answers, and I'm asking the same thing myself. So right now I guess I'm kind of taking a more wait and see approach. I've definitely slowed down on buying a lot in the last few months, I'd say. I'm really looking forward to just seeing the backlog hit us. I think a lot of people are. So that's where I'm at.
Interesting. No, I think that's kind of the consensus that I've gotten from a lot of people right now is that wait and see type of approach, just to see, because it is a very strange time. Like you had hinted towards it there about the PSA backlog, or just backlogs in general for all of the grading companies, and to see when that flood comes out, which our boy James, that's one of the big reasons why he couldn't join us tonight, is because he is working night and day trying to get all of those PSA returns back out to people. But it's going to be interesting. And on top of that, you've just got this weird dynamic with modern products and shortage of supply. You've got delays, and the modern markets is in such fluctuation right now. So I think you're right. I feel that sentiment of just kind of wait and see. Jake, what about you?
I've been buying a lot myself. I'm mostly buying sort of low end slabs, and I'm buying high end stuff. Although a lot of the stuff I'm buying is not Pokemon still, but I am actually starting to buy some Pokemon again, and I'm definitely starting to look more because I actually think that there could actually be cards that would fall into price ranges that I feel comfortable. So it kind of is worth the time and the investment now to really be watching certain auctions and seeing where they fall. I'm also planning on going to more like collecticon type events and other types of events this year. So I'm trying to pick up a variety of inventory that I think would be good, and help my sort of booth stand out both in Pokemon and other items, but also have like a range of items at all different price ranges that I think are, good items that I can get cheap enough that I can offer them at what I think are really affordable win-win type prices. So that's sort of my mindset when I'm looking for stuff right now for that, for the selling. In terms of investing and collecting, just continuing to try and meet my goals that I've had for 6 years, and just trying to make progress on them one card at a time, and very patient. I plan on collecting for, I don't know. I mean, forever. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You never know how you'll feel in the future, but I certainly have like no, I never really had that fear of missing out. And I certainly don't have it now of just, it's setting goals, making progress towards them, as far as like a personal collector thing. But yeah, spending a lot, bidding on a lot. This PWCC auction is going to be crazy tonight. I bid on 1,700 items or something insane.
Wow.
So it's going to be interesting to see. Like, hopefully I don't win them all. I obviously won't, but it's going to be interesting to see if I win any and what prices. And I'm fascinated to see how the format works with there being so many cards and how you can't really track them all. And you're only going to have like 5-minute windows to then raise your bids, and then 1-minute window eventually to raise your bid. And so a lot of people are just throwing in a max bid instead of sniping like they normally would. So it'll be super interesting for it to all play out.
No, that's really cool, man. And Jake, you've always kind of had that dollar cost average approach, man, where it's just like it doesn't matter what the market's doing. Jake's always buying, and usually in large amounts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I bought 5 Pokemon cards over the past year, and I bought humongous amounts of other things. Batman, Superman, DBZ, Harry Potter, Middle Earth, White Schwartz, like Magic, like massive amounts of things in other areas that I thought were really being overlooked. And while Pokemon I thought was in sort of a mania, but now we're getting back to a place where I'm feeling better about a lot of the Pokemon prices. And so I'm kind of coming back to this market. It's not that there weren't deals in the Pokemon market, but it was almost like there were so few and it was so difficult to find them, and it just wasn't a good value of time. Whereas like these other areas, it was like there were lots of things that I felt like had great value. So it's just like much easier to buy that in bulk. And I'm always looking to buy big lots and buy in bulk for sure.
No, I totally agree with that. And ever since I've gotten more into the business side of TCGs in general, I really have started to expand my scope on everything, and really have taken a similar approach to you, where I've taken a little bit of a back seat on Pokemon and have been exploring a lot more esoteric type of TCGs, or lesser known TCGs, or TCGs that are just coming out, and starting to look at building positions in those as well. So I think that's really smart.
Yeah. And it's all fun. And, I think the important thing is setting goals and having an understanding of like what you're trying to do as you kind of broaden out, because it can get, and I know Zach, like you're into Metazoo, so am I. I'm not sure if you are now, but like when you broaden out, you can miss more things, and it just becomes more, and you can also overspend more easily, and that addiction stuff and just like the fun of all of it can get out of control too. So it's more to manage, but there's also a lot more opportunity in doing that, and fun, because it keeps it exciting and fun to collect other things and learn. And for me, learning is like a huge draw. Like I love just learning. So.
Excellent. Well, there you go, guys. They have been busy. Both these gentlemen have been busy as always. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's jump into the live chat here, see what questions you guys have that you've brought in. I saw one here from Zaminator, who says, I would love for you guys to talk about where the staff cards will be going in the future now that they are discontinued. Zach, you want to lead us off in this one, buddy?
Sure, I can. Another question that I've asked myself, and I'm sure these guys probably have at some point or another as well. If I could tell you with confidence, wherever the prices will be, however many years from now, I'd either be scooping them all up or avoiding all of them. So I'm right there with all of you guys. But okay, so like realistically, the first thing that I like to ask myself whenever I'm looking to make a purchase is, number one, am I interested in that purchase? So for the staff cards, it's something that interests me personally, like, ooh, it's exclusive. It's got the little promo stamp on it. That's subjective if someone likes the stamp or not. I happen to like it. It gives it its own unique element. From an investment standpoint, it's really interesting because of the exclusivity with it. But it also doesn't necessarily make it a good investment, right? So that's what's really interesting to me. Because when you get into the higher dollar amounts, and this is why I'm always so cautious of higher end cards, like whatever it would be, the evolution, staff promo, whichever one it is, the higher that dollar amount gets, for me personally, it makes it a little bit more difficult to justify. And I'd like to hear Jake's point on this as well. It makes it a little bit more difficult for me to justify personally, okay, do I put 10 grand into this card, or do I put 10 grand into literally anything else that could potentially see a higher percentage increase? Mm-hmm. So that's really what I'm asking myself at the end of the day. Do I see this particular card, for a $10,000 card to reach $20,000? Okay, awesome, 100% return. Well, if I buy, like I talk about literally all the time, I just can't help not to, I buy a $40 ATB and it goes to $80. That did the same thing for me. Now, I'm not saying that all ATBs are going to that or anything like that, but that's kind of the questions that I like to ask myself would be these cheaper items, potentially, if they could perform better for me or the same or not. Just mm-hmm. because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's a better investment and vice versa. So in a very roundabout way, yes, them no longer making them intrigues me, but 10 years from now, are people going to remember and care about the Vivid Voltage staff pre-release promos? I think so, but it is very esoteric, and I don't know. I don't know. At the end of the day, I think there's still a good investment. I think it's still a market that's not necessarily, not a big chunk of the population is aware of it. So if you look at like the numbers, the pop reports, and how much everything's going for right now, and again, I don't mean to be too vague, but it is a vague, very niche market. So mm-hmm. I'm cautiously optimistic on the promos moving forward. Hopefully that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You want to jump in, Nav, or
go ahead, Jake?
Yeah, so you said a lot there, so I'm trying to think of how to, like, which parts to respond. I think, okay, well, I guess to the person's question, I think is sort of, is the discontinuing, maybe to start there, is that going to matter? Like what part is that going to play in it? I don't know. First of all, when Pokemon says they're discontinuing something, it doesn't mean they're never making them again. So that's the first thing I would say. It means that they're not making them right now, or they're changing something up right now. We don't necessarily, they didn't promise us, it's not a reserve list magic type gathering item, where it's like, there's a huge confidence that they'll never do it again. So that's one thing I would say. I'm more of a fan of the Stamped Worlds promos, including the staff ones. I will always be much, much more of a fan of those cards. They're a lot more unique to me. They have a lot more of a story, and they're tied into the biggest, event, the Worlds event. Then like the staff cards from set cards, which is what I assume he's the question is talking about. It would all depend on price point. So it's kind of a non-answer, but it's just the truth. And it really gets to Zach's answer, which is just like, it all depends on price point. Where would I rate those versus, the thing I like about staff cards or stamped cards is that they're affordable trophies. They're a rare card that that almost anyone could own. And I think that the reason why I love the Worlds promos in particular so much was for that reason, because I saw the full art Pikachu, the Pikachu trophies going for $100,000, $150,000. And then a card that was awarded the same sort of way, just to a lesser place within that tournament, that was only like 10 times less rare, going for $100 or $150 or $200 at the same time, right? That made no sense. And a $200 item is so much it's so much more easy for a $200 item to go to $1,000, which is exactly what they did, over the last 6 months, most of these items, because there's a lot more people who can afford that $200 item. There's a lot more people who can afford that $1,000 item, and so that's the type of stuff I'm always thinking about. And then I'm thinking about, from a business perspective, who are you trying to sell to? Like, who are you catering to? And this is what's missing. This is missing from a decent amount of the content, which is that, like, if you are a business, that if you're a person like Radar or SM Pratt, who deals a lot in high-end trophies, like, you're going to probably know which one to buy a little more. You're going to know what to do with it, and you're going to have all those relationships to easily be able to sell it. So it makes more sense to play in that sort of market. If you don't have that sort of thing, and you have a store, or you have a great eBay business that caters more toward like middle, lower dollar amounts, then probably getting a lot of modern product at retail is going to be a much more profitable, sensible business strategy and business plan. Now, as far as like an investment, gosh, I really don't know. A lot of it's going to depend on price point and depend on just like how well Pokemon does, obviously. What we have seen, and last thing I'll say, is that I've really been digging into the numbers this week in preparing for like the Patreon analytics, and the tens and the rarest stuff and the trophy stuff overall has come down a lot less and has done a lot better and stabilized a lot more. And the stuff that's really come down a lot were like the PSA 9s and the PSA 8s. Or the less rare stuff, particularly in vintage. And the same thing is going to happen to modern Pokemon as all these PSA cards come back. Mm-hmm. And it's true for some of these stamps too. There's a lot more of these stamps than there are of maybe some other stamped cards or some World's Promo type cards, or some, cards that came out in other sort of ways. So that's sort of my, my maybe fuller answer on like, what do I think about those? I think if you like them and you enjoy them and you get them for, I don't know, a few $100, $150, like it's fine. I'm not buying massive amounts of them. So I think that, that means that I don't think that they're an amazing place to make a lot of money, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, things that you both said that are really good. What I like that Zach said is, how much are you willing to put into this particular item? And for me, I've always viewed Pokemon cards as just an asset class, right? So it's like, how much am I willing to reallocate from other investment classes, other asset classes, and put that towards something in Pokemon? It would have to be very good, and the ROI on it, I would think, would have to be, above and beyond what I would invest in another asset class, in real estate, in the stock market, in crypto, what have you. And so if all you're invested in is Pokemon, well, right there, you need to kind of reevaluate your position. But if all you are is invested in Pokemon, look at what your market is like Jake said. Who are you going to be selling to? Who do you plan on selling to? And what kind of capital do you have? Is it better off, like you said, to go with an ETB that the return, the margin is going to be the same, but you're into it for a lower price point, for a lower cost basis, and you can maybe move more quantities to come up with a similar return, a similar profit margin. So I like both of those. And what I want to say to you guys as well is I also want to turn this conversation over to you in the sense that if you guys see a particular question in the chat that interests you or that you think is really good, by all means, just pick it out and we'll go ahead and discuss it. So if you guys saw one in there, by all means, go ahead and take that one and run with it.
So it looks like the second question here by Kevin Wetzel is, what do you guys think of what might happen in the secondary market for collectibles of all kinds going up due to the possible issues of being able to get gifts this holiday season? Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's that will prices go up in the holiday season, and the fact that people are buying gifts, will that impact sales for people?
Well, I mean, I think if I can jump in on this one, I think if we're talking about, modern products, if we're talking about new Pokemon releases, then I would absolutely say yes. because most people are going to be purchasing a lot of these products off of the secondary market. Celebrations, I have heard in certain parts of the country that the supply has been better than in others, especially in like big box stores. But then in other places, like here in Arizona, there's nothing on shelves. I've gone to, I can't tell you, Walmart's, Target's, Barnes and Noble. I've probably been to 30 different ones, and there's nothing on shelves. So I think that the disparity there in a lot of modern products and being able to access that, especially new releases, is very different for different people. So the majority are going to be purchasing these off of the secondary market, and I think a lot of resellers understand that. They understand that there continues to be shortages, and they understand that there's going to be a high demand in the fourth quarter of this year because it is the holiday season. So more than likely, you're going to see those prices start to move back up again. And then we move forward to something like Fusion Strike, which is coming out next month, in fact, here in just a few weeks. And we already know that there is going to be as much as a 70% supply cut for Fusion Strike. So you can almost guarantee that the prices are going to be much, much higher for those products. If we talk about vintage, that one's a little bit more difficult because it is so broad, and there's a lot of different price points and a full spectrum that people could be buying from. So I don't know that vintage is as much tied to a specific time of year as modern would be. To me, I feel like vintage in a lot of ways is tied more towards influence. I think that much in the same way as the stock market, especially when we're talking about graded cards, typically we have these critical mass points. We have a Logan Paul break or something like that really catalyzes a lot of the vintage market, and especially pockets of the vintage market. So that's just my perspective. I think that modern and new releases, you'll certainly see that. With vintage, it just probably depends on maybe what niche or what area you're looking at.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I think same answer for modern. I think vintage, we could sit here and come up with theories of how it's going to like hurt vintage because people are going to be saving up their money for like gifts. And so they're going to be, and that people aren't buying those vintage high-end cards for gifts. And so it's going to hurt that because people need to save up a little bit more money. So they're not spending or even, and there are plenty of modern booster boxes that are going for, 800 to, or 500 to 1,500 too. I put those in the same category those are less likely to be gifts versus like a $60 ETB, $100 ETB. But I think that's kind of getting into the weeds and isn't necessarily like a note. Like, I don't know how to quantify how many people out there are like that. And so I wouldn't expect that to be like a noticeable trend, but it's fun to like theorize all possibilities. But yeah, it's this whole past year, it really things have not followed those sorts of normal trends because what happened in the Pokemon hobby was so much more intense than any like smaller thing like a holiday, so now that we're getting back to maybe a little bit more of a normal-ish, we'd have to define exactly what that means, but yeah, but
I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
We might see things like that, which would affect sales, have more of a stronger impact. Certainly if Mason was here, he would say, I'm sure that his store particularly, sees quite a bit of an uptick around the holidays and people buying presents and gifts for people, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have much to add to all of that. I agree with you guys. The only thing I would say would be, I guess to put it in my own words, would be, yes, I think we'll see an uptick during the holiday season. I don't think that's anything outlandish to expect or assume. And then, as far as vintage, we could talk about that all day long, like Jake said, about whether we think it'll go up, down, kind of stay right where around it's at. And then it'll be interesting to see why we get this wave of PSA cards during that time, how that will impact the market. And to be completely honest, I have no idea what will happen. If I did know, I would be buying a whole lot of product because I have all the answers, but yeah, no idea for vintage either. But yeah, I think we'll see an uptick on modern. How much? I don't know. It really depends. I think it'll be more so than we see now, but everything's so crazy now. Mm-hmm. Which I did see another question if we kind of wanted to jump into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of tied in. Someone said, did any of you think that Celebration sealed product would remain this expensive for this long? So I don't know if this would be necessarily a long time. I guess it would depend on what you would expect for that. I did not anticipate certain products being quadruple MSRP right out of the gate. I'm sure a lot of us did not, or else some of us might have been buying certain product a little bit more. But mm-hmm. No, I did not expect
buy those products. That's why they went up so much, unless you had the distributor connections.
Exactly. So no, I didn't expect it to be that crazy. Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and piggyback off of yours, like with celebrations. In some ways, I was expecting this because I've seen how abysmal the Pokemon Company has handled subsequent waves with all of their products. And we actually, so here's a funny thing, and a lot of people out there might not even know this, but we just got the third wave of battle styles. And what a lot of people don't know is when you're working with a distributor, they don't actually give you any type of forewarning when they're going to send out a subsequent wave for Pokemon. The only reason you know is that you receive a tracking number with the items that are being shipped to you. That's when you know that you're essentially your next wave of Pokemon is coming. And we just got that the other day for Battle Styles booster boxes. We didn't get anything about ETBs. We didn't get anything about individually sleeved blisters, blister packs, anything like that. The only one was booster boxes, and it was a pretty small wave. This last one was a pretty small one. But then we look back, and we're still waiting on second wave of Chilling Reign, second wave of Evolving Skies. And there's no kind of rhyme or reason to the intervals in which they're releasing these. So I really had no expectation that we were going to get a significant amount of celebrations anytime soon. And then compounded with that, we also got the notification that the collector's chests were going to be delayed all the way until the end of November. And then we knew that the figure collection, the ultra premium collection, were already going to be heavily allocated. So right there, you just have this cacophony of noise and products that would suggest that yes, we would see a spike in these products because there's just not any of them out there. And what we've been talking about since the beginning of this podcast is uncertainty. There's just so much uncertainty right now, and Pokemon as a company certainly hasn't really helped out in resolving a lot of that unknown and uncertainty. And so a lot of people are clamoring to try to get products and are basically just saying, you know what, I'm just going to get it now because I know I can get it. It's probably going to be an exorbitant price, but I know I can get it now because who knows when it may come back out again, and who knows if it may, right? We can look back at something like the Calyrex V-Box. We can look at the Trainer's Toolkit, the Marnie box. I don't think we're ever going to get another wave of those. Now, never say never, right? But there is really no outlook in sight that we're going to get those products again. So if you got those, even if it was at a higher price, maybe that was a good idea, maybe it wasn't. But that's just kind of my take. I really fully expected for celebrations to be crazy, and it was.
Yeah, I heard from a couple people that a second wave of Evolving Skies and Celebrations they got today. So, it's all over the place. So, and I don't know how much that actually means and how big those things are going to be. Mm-hmm. So it's, and what impact that'll have on the market. I know that, a little piece of data, when Rudy does a sale for Evolving Skies or for Celebrations, it sells out in less than 30 seconds. So, and he's selling it basically at market. He doesn't really sell it under about at market. So, you save money because you don't have to pay the taxes if you're not a business. And also, Shit, he pays the shipping. So, and I'm sure he gets a great deal because he buys pallet and pallet. So it's one of those kind of like win-win business models that he's got going on. But the real point behind all of that is just that the speed, 30 seconds, and that was so, it used to take hours for something like that to sell. So we're still in that type of market, at least for those two sets. Clearly not the same thing for Battle Styles or Chilling Reign either, even though Chilling Reign's, not if there's a little bit more of an argument to me that was a better set than Battle Styles and was a little bit slept on compared, but for me though, all of that stuff, although true, and I agree with people who make these like moderns and differentiations between like, this is the better one than this. I wouldn't invest in any of it. I think it's all too risky. And I think in 5 years from now, like I might be able to get those products at the exact same price that they're right now. Like it would not shock me at all. And then I would have saved 5 years and I'm plowing all this money into things that if Pokemon is strong, I know for a fact will not be available. These like higher end vintage items and these rare trophy cards, they will be in collections. You will not be able to get them. And so I just think that if you think Pokemon's going to be, successful in the long run, those are just smarter plays. I also happen to like those items better. So it's sort of that double thing from a collector, but it also wouldn't surprise me. And I made a video on this, if a lot of these products are double or triple what they are in a few years, because they didn't print enough, because Pokemon, was continued to roar on, and because there were so many sets from Pokemon that they never were able to really go back and print more. And they just kind of moved on to the next thing. It's like both of those things seem reasonable to me. Mm-hmm. It's also reasonable that we hit some sort of macroeconomic difficulty in the world and people are not buying any of this stuff. And I think that's going to hit vintage really hard and it's going to hit modern really hard. And, and so there really isn't a way to protect from that other than like spend below your, raise your income or, don't, spend below, keep a nice gap between the amount of money you take in as an income and the amount you're just spending in general, and don't put yourself, too far in debt. But everyone has different risk tolerance with this stuff and wants to play it a different way. And then also people like collecting different things and it makes them happy. And that's the other huge part of it, that people, and everyone's going to place their own bets.
Mm-hmm. PokeKid92, he's got an interesting one here, which is kind of the direction that we were headed in talking about other TCGs. And Jake, you had mentioned you were during this time looking a lot more into other TCGs. He says, I want to hear some My Hero Academia talk. How has the release looked? Any buzz on it? If you guys don't mind, I'll start off on this one. So My Hero, the interesting thing about My Hero, so this was produced by Jasco Games for the new My Hero set. It's an extremely popular anime, strong IP, all things that I really liked about it. But Jasco did an absolutely abysmal job of promoting this new TCG. A lot of people didn't even know that the boxes that have been released are actually first edition boxes. It has limited first edition print on the box itself, including the 2-player rival deck, and then they released also a DLC pack as well. But Jasco never even made mention of this. I was actually, and the only reason that I found out about this is that we got our My Hero products from through Asmodee, which was the preferred distributor for Jasco. And we asked them, we said, hey, we've heard through the grapevine that these are going to be first edition boxes. Do you know, to our sales rep? And they had no idea. And the way that we found out was Jasco has a very small podcast, and they announced it on the, we're talking less than like 500 subscribers and like, maybe like 20 people tuning into their podcast, and they announced it on there. And so we were actually the first ones to actually announce this publicly. So it was just an abysmal job. So right now you're seeing like the booster boxes, I think secondary market prices are a little over $100 at this point. But what I'm interested to see is that early next year, you will start seeing all of the unlimited boxes that will be in Targets, Walmarts, all the big box stores. The unlimited prints will start on November 15th, I believe. October 15th was the release of first edition products. So I will be interested to see after November 15th, after they start being featured in the bigger stores and start getting more notoriety, will people start to then realize, hey, I've got an unlimited box, but there was a first edition print run as well. So, you know, for me personally, we released a ton of these on PokéRealm. In fact, we've got a bunch of them up right now, first edition boxes, and I've just set some aside for myself where I think the real testing ground will be early next year when a lot of these boxes are in big stores. There's more notoriety, and you also get the subsequent set, which is, I think, called Crimson Rampage, that will be released around, I think, February of next year. That'll be the real turning point to see where I think it's actually going to go, and if it's a sustainable TCG.
So yeah, it's really interesting. My Hero Academia was the 6th best-selling manga in 2019 and the 8th best-selling manga in 2020. There are thousands and thousands of manga, different manga out there. So that's really interesting, number one. Number two, it's in such a fragile state right now because it is so new. So obviously it's not established, right? So at this point, it really could do anything. It could pull a Metazoo tomorrow, for all I know. It could be the next Yu-Gi-Oh, for all I know. And I'm really sincere when I mention that too. It's an extremely, extremely popular anime. That's why they made a card game out of it. However, I would say, have you guys heard of the World of Warcraft TCG? So I really could see it do anything. However, to Pokenav's point, so yeah, I'm not like holding a ton of products, stonking it out. However, do I see potential there? Absolutely. However, with Pokenav, I actually didn't even hear about it until I got PokéRealm's newsletter. I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Like, I'm pretty, I would like to think I'm fairly in the know on a lot of up and coming TCGs. I'm just in the hobby all the time. That's the sort of information I consume a lot of. And the fact that I didn't hear about it at all was kind of a red flag to me, kind of like what you said, Nav. So it'll be really interesting in the next, however many months, however many couple of years to see how they run it. Are they going to print it into the ground? Is it going to be exclusive? Is it going to be ran well? So there are a lot of questions right now. Like I said, it's in a very fragile state. So it's not something where it's like a lock for me, but it is a very interesting play and something for me. Like if you want to have something in your investing collectible portfolio, in my opinion, I think it would be a riskier kind of a bet almost, but definitely interesting.
Yeah, I definitely would not buy a lot of it. Just to be completely honest, these are items that could be $15 a box, and there are countless examples from huge, like Panini DBZ is a great example, but there are countless examples of boxes I'm buying for $10, $8 that were once $60, $70 from huge things. I think Weiss Schwarz is a much better option for people who want to invest or engage in anime at this time. Mm-hmm. That being said, because Weiss Schwarz you can get for, if you buy if you can buy it from the best places to buy it, I won't go into detail right here, but you can really get them for about $50 a box, 16 boxes, and you get 3 signed cards by the actual character, by the actual voice actor in the anime. Mm-hmm. It's great looking art. Obviously some of it's it is waifu-ish, some of it, but there's also parts that aren't. I think buying that for the best anime makes sense. Buying some of that product, getting some of those, they're called SP cards, which are those signed cards, really good looking cards at this point in time. That being said, I want to buy some because I want to see what it's all about, and I enjoy opening cards and I enjoy new stuff. So I'm not no part of me is going to be buying a palette, but I definitely be interested in picking up a box at $80 because I like cards and it's fun to open new stuff. So that's my personal feeling on it. When it when I was seeing it at around 100, I was like, no, thank you for me. But if I could get it around like 80 for me personally, I'd be interested, if that doesn't break the bank for you, and just for fun. And then if you want to keep a few boxes hoping that they're going to go up, or maybe you'll open them later, I don't think there's anything like criminal about that. But I do think you should understand the history of games and card games like that. Although, that wasn't in a period as bullish and as mania as we're still in right now. And the truth is like, this game's pretty early. Like if this mania keeps going, there's going to be like 10 more games that are going to come after this one. And because this one's like fairly early-ish, it might do a lot better than some of those. And, you just never really know. I haven't opened it, Nav. So like for me also, it would have to do with like what's inside. What are the pull rates? Like what cool items do they put? Do they have signed cards? Do they have like one-of-ones? What do they, I would want to talk, if I was going to buy like a palette, I'd want to talk to the makers and get a sense of what are their plans for this. Is this a collector game? Is this a player game? What does the player base look like? I'd really want to know all of those things. If you're buying one box, you don't really, it's whatever.
Right. Right. Well, and ultimately it's a really good point, because I think for any successful TCG, and this is another thing, somebody else had a question on this, which I figured we would probably get into eventually. But I think for any TCG, you have to have a strong player base for it to be sustainable. I really feel that way. You have to have people that like to play the game. You have to have people that are going to card shops, to conventions, that are going to tournaments, that are playing this, that are actively engaging in it. And the one thing that I will say about my Hero, I'm not a big player in any TCG. I'll be 100% upfront about that. But from what I understand with my Hero is it is very difficult to learn, and that may impede a lot of people breaking into it. With Pokemon, I sat down, over a couple hours and was like, okay, I got it. I could grasp it very quickly. Kids can get it. But when you start getting into some of these other card games that your demographic starts to shrink down more and more, and you essentially exclude other demographics, maybe because of the difficulty of it, it'll be interesting to see how it fares based upon that. And that is what leads me to somebody had a question in here more generally just about Metazoo. But we actually finally, both myself and some of my other businesses finally got in with Golden Distribution for carrying Metazoo. We still don't know how much that's actually going to be, or whether that's how all of this is going to transpire, but we finally got in. And the big question on my mind for the sustainability of Metazoo is, since they released their initial product, Cryptid Nation, they've done a pretty poor job of building that base of players, of building that community around a product that I think ultimately lends to its sustainability. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you guys, whichever you want to take the reins on this one. But just kind of discussing Metazoo and what you've seen. We're on to the second set now, the beta set essentially. What have you seen from it thus far, and what are your perceptions of how they've handled things?
You feel like going first,
Jake, or you?
Either way.
Okay. I'll go first just because I might forget this point, if that's okay. So I had a really interesting conversation. I'm glad that you brought this up. So it was like a week or two ago at this point. I called a bunch of my buddies that I graduated college with, who none of them are in the card collecting space. I wanted kind of an outside biased opinion of people that I know. I know what their backgrounds are. A lot of them are engineers and businessmen and things like that. So it was really interesting when I asked them what their opinion was on this up and coming TCG, just to hear their different experiences. And this is totally anecdotal, by the way, guys. I'm not saying that you should take this as the gospel or anything like that, but I want to throw this little nugget out there for, because I think it is relevant. And what I mean by that is it's really interesting how polarizing Metazoo is right now, right? I want to ignore the elephant in the room. And that's when you know you have something. And I'm not saying that Metazoo is going to be the next Pokemon or anything like that. It could seriously fall on its face in the next few months. It could seriously be the next big thing. What was interesting about every single one of these guys that I called, all of them said something along the lines of, oh, that's really interesting. And all of them said something to the effect of, you know, I really liked cryptids. I actually studied them at some point or another, or I play games and it's already got that baked in audience, which to me personally, I don't really know anything about cryptids and it just wasn't a me thing. So it's really interesting hearing all those different opinions, knowing that there are mindsets out there that just strikes a chord with them. So the fact that people write that off so quickly is very interesting. And to me, that shows that there's potential opportunity. And again, I'm not saying that it's the next next best thing, but what's really, really interesting to me is the potential for growth, right? The more risk you have, potentially, you could have more growth there. It's at net zero right now. So sure, if I buy, I don't even know how much they are now. I think Nightfall boxes are like $250 a box. If I buy several boxes of those or however many boxes of those, for me personally, I'm going to be able to sleep at night knowing full well if that goes to zero tomorrow, Zach's going to be okay. I didn't put all of my money in that. But I'm saying if that's the next, and I'm not saying Pokemon, it's just you got a place in the market. Personally, for me, man, I really like Metazoo personally though. So, so I'm biased. So I'll let that come out here. But I really like Metazoo, and I'm not saying I like it from an investment in that I am sure that it's going to go to the moon, but I do really like it because the potential is there and that it is so early. And because of that, it has that potential for that extreme growth. So hopefully that makes sense. I know a lot of people, I'll just leave it at that. Sorry.
Yeah, I always found the hate for Metazoo fascinating. To me, Metazoo is a much better investment than modern Pokemon. And I was saying this in Discords extremely early on, because although I thought the prices were silly and that it was highly likely to fail, the poker player in me understood the implied odds, understood that it had it could exponentially grow so much, because everything that modern Pokemon, this is not. This is something brand new with all new characters. This is the first ever, and it's going to be the most historic items in the franchise, or the first stuff. They are actually focusing on collectability, and Pokemon has done that more. But Pokemon doesn't do any one-of-ones, any samples, any things that are truly rare and scarce and difficult to find and get. Metazoo is doing all of that. They have a person in charge who is pushing all of that and constantly trying to come up with new, interesting ways of doing that. And so for me, and I understood the modern sports market, and I understood the hunger for one-of-ones, one-of-100s, and they didn't really exist outside of like Marvel trading cards in any sort of non-sports, item or element. I guess they exist in Fortnite too, and some other things, but these super like rare, hard to pull cards. But Fortnite's even is very small. So, so for me, it was this situation of like, it's silly, it's kind of insane. And the amount of hype and interest and engagement and prices are wild to me. But if you want to be in something with a very high risk and a very high potential reward, Metazoo is an interesting place. Now, I think it's interesting at retail or trying to get it below MSRP. Like, it's much less interesting buying it at those higher prices to me. You also have to understand, if you're investing in Metazoo, they're coming out with more and more 1-of-100 promos. And so every time they're only 100 of that card, but now there are 7 different promos that are only 100 of that card. So really there are 700, and they're all competing with each other. Now, there's a lot more room, and if it gets popular, that's nothing. We have tons of promos in Pokemon that are all extremely valuable, that all have larger print runs than all those things, much, much larger. Like the Misakis have 35,000 print runs, for example, and those are very expensive cards. So it's very interesting. I think it's a fascinating psychology to study Metazoo, to study how people react to it, and how it does is it tells us a lot about what's going on. I don't think there's anything to compare this to. What I would look for is I look at like the last Mania, was there any sort of, like that happened in the 90s around a lot of these collectibles? Were there any like card collectibles? I mean, we could think of like maybe Beanie Babies, right? As like something that kind of came up, was part of that mania. And believe it or not, there were people on like the news and other sort of social media like us saying, we're going to invest in this stuff for 40 years and be interested in this stuff for the rest of our lives. And there are plenty of clips of people saying that, right? And feeling those sorts of feelings and really believing that. And then we saw what happened, but that was because of overprinting, oversupply, that there was endless amounts of this stuff sitting in warehouses, and the fact that demand fell off a lot, kind of all at once. And that, and Michael Waddell, who I talked to, is a student, I think, of these failed things and is going to try to be very careful for that not to happen. He's also partnering with every single influencer and every single and every single person under the sun right now. And obviously that's like, people don't like a number of people hate that, and they really don't like that. They also really hate that it's working from a financial perspective and attention perspective. I get that. I understand those sentiments. And, and I think that that's a difficult balance, and that's an interesting discussion, in and of itself. But as far as just like a pure investment play, like a long shot play, I'm definitely going to be buying like Rudy's Metazoo thing tomorrow if I can get it, at a fairly cheap valuation plus the Rudy promo card, but also because I think it's fun, because I like it. It's fun. And for me, that amount of money it's fine. If it goes to zero, I'm fine. Like I'm not upset. I enjoy it. I'm definitely not the dude out there though, who's paying $30,000 for Sample Mothman and building a humongous trophy collection of all of those. And that dude might end up hitting like, having a very valuable collection that might be huge. It could be, I don't really know. I definitely don't have that sort of comfort or interest in doing that. But I think that sort of buying below MSRP or at MSRP, I guess, for something like Nightfall, when, they've extended the print run up to like 80,000 or 50,000. I forget now off the top of my head, 80,000, I think, from 25,000. And they're going to keep doing that. And they're going to keep making more and more and more. And for me, I see much higher upside with Metazoo over Flesh and Blood, but if I had to bet which one was going to be here in 5 years, I'd bet Flesh and Blood if I had to bet one of them, because of the player base, and just the stability around something like that. I think that Metazoo could be more of that high flyer, gets too close to the sun, gets burned. But if I had to put money on it, I would bet in favor of Metazoo, also because I like it and I hope it succeeds, and I want it to succeed. And it's biased. I have a biased. There's something about it. I have an affinity towards that art in that game. It reminds me of Pokemon, and so it is what it is. And I like cryptids. I've always loved monsters, and I've always loved stories and tales. So it very much appeals to me on that level. But people paying $13,000, $30,000, $50,000 for single cards is outrageous. You can get cards that are that like almost that important in the Pokemon world for those prices. And certainly as an investment, if you're just thinking about money, I would definitely go for Pokemon over Metazoo. So, or
probably even sports as well, Jake, right? I mean, vintage sports cards as well in similar price range.
Yeah, good luck getting cards in sports now. Sales this year, like there are now hundreds and hundreds of sports cards over $1 million. Like probably 1,000 sports cards over $1 million now.
That's crazy.
That's
insane. I do like what you guys said about Metazoo though, because I have a similar sentiment. I like the sort of the connotation behind it, the vibe that it gives off, the cryptids, the Nightfall. I'm looking forward to the Metazoo UFO, because I've always been into the paranormal and to UFOs, extra, all that stuff, all the paranormal. And so I have an attachment to it as well, in that sense that I like the themes that they're going with. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have, kind of a similar attachment to those type of themes. And I already said if they come out with like a character card for Fox Mulder and Dana Scully, I'm all in. Doesn't matter what the price. Like Pokenav's all in on a Mulder and Scully card.
I think the other point that you made, Nav, that you need playability. I think so. You don't clearly there's no playability in sports. There's no playability in comics. So you don't need playability in a collector, in a hobby for it to be very valuable and for it to sustain value. But we haven't seen someone like try to do, like, we haven't seen, and Pokemon, the hobby we're in, right? It's really, it isn't based on the high prices and the trophy cards and all, you know, and all the high prices on vintage is not based on playability. But when you don't have that playability, you're so dependent on keeping people's attention on, like, and wanting to collect and wanting the arts and being connected to the story and the characters and all sorts of things. And so it makes the IP like so important, and having a new game with a new IP, although yes, the IP works in large part because there are these cryptids that we actually connect to or remember and know about, but it's certainly risky. It's why I say Flesh and Blood, if I had to bet which one would still be here without, but I would bet on Metazoo. So I hope everyone understands the math behind this. I'd put money into Metazoo over Flesh and Blood because the upside is much higher for me, and the gambles, they're like worth it to me, but there's much higher chance I'm going to lose all my money or almost all my money in Metazoo versus Flesh and Blood for me because of the playability. That's my overall take on it.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think that the playability adds a dimension to that. I think that, you know, for something that is based purely on the collectible aspect, the collectability, I think that the IP, the company has to continually outdo themselves. So every single set has to be twice as good. The arts have to be twice as good. You have to go, you know, you have to make that progression all the time from, you know, a full art to a hyper rare to a gold to an amazing rare to, or, you know, whatever it is. Like it constantly has to be getting better and better and better. Where if you do have that playability aspect, then there's people out there. You know, I've had the pleasure of speaking with Omnipoke, and a lot of the really big competitive players out there will pay bigger money for a card that isn't necessarily collectible, but because it was so pivotal for them at a certain point in time when they were playing the game. Like it was a huge card built into the decks at that time, and people will pay more because of that sort of nostalgia of the...
Well, Magic is the best example of that, right? Magic's the best example of that. The Power 9 is what it is because it was the strongest cards and everyone wanted it because of the playability, versus no one played so many less. The reason Charizard was the strongest is it wasn't playable. You know, Hitmonchan and Chansey were the playable ones, but people wanted Charizard because it was a fire-breathing dragon. It shows you even as little kids, the difference in the psychology of like what was drawing people to those things and why people were doing it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also lends to the demographic that they're appealing to. You know, Magic is a much older demographic, whereas Pokemon has always kind of been more appealing towards children. And so I think that's certainly a characteristic. And again, one with like Metazoo, that it is very reminiscent of Pokemon, especially classic Pokemon in the artwork. And I think, as you guys said, I enjoy that aspect as well. Let's see. Anything else that you guys are seeing in the chat that is standing out to you?
I'm sure people had some opinions on.
I'm sure very strong opinions.
That gets the chat moving usually.
Yeah. Here's one. Nicholas, what do you guys think about Dragon Ball Super versus Metazoo versus Flesh and Blood long term? We've already kind of given our opinions on Metazoo and Flesh and Blood and comparing those two. I guess maybe a good overall question for that would be, outside of Pokemon. Jake, you were talking about it earlier, some of the ones that you were looking at. What are some of the top contenders right now that you've got on your radar that you think have good potential, both short term and long term?
Active games or dead things too?
Both. Let's talk about both.
Well, giving away my hand here when I'm still buying actively now. I like a lot of vintage stuff, a lot of really old stuff, a lot of stuff from the 1890s, from the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, et cetera, et cetera. And there are different, not TCGs necessarily, but collectible cards from a lot of those eras of different IPs that I really like. So, for example, like 1940 Superman are the first ever superhero cards in the existence of planet Earth. It's the first ever superhero, and it's the first ever card of that superhero from 1940, the same year that those multi-million-dollar comics were coming out. These cards came out. They're very scarce. They're extremely hard to find in high grade. 0-10s exist in the world, a handful of 9s in the entire set. And, the vast majority of them are not even PSA 1s. They're just trash. So I like that. I like that people don't know about it. I like that it's not talked about on social media. I like that it's not the hot thing right now and the hype thing now, but it has the story. And I also just love them from a collector's perspective. I feel privilege is too strong of a word because it's cardboard, but I feel like I have something really cool because I really like cards. Like I have an affinity. They're important to my life. I collected all sorts of cards as a kid, and there's something meaningful is probably the best word to me about having pieces of history like that. And just like I find it meaningful having PSA 10 first edition WotC hollows. Like I find that meaningful to have one of the only, 60 or 70 because it was a card that was so important to me as a child. So I like those. I like 1966 Batman. I like 1935 Mickey Mouse cards, the first ever Mickey Mouse cards, the first ever Batman cards. I like 1966 Marvel Donruss. I like Harry Potter a lot. Now it got a lot more heat and then I kind of moved on to the next thing. But before it did, I enjoy it. Now that's more of a kind of a fun thing for me. But, I liked that. I like DBS. I think it's fun. I preferred Score in DBZ. And I liked,
me too.
And so I have a huge Score collection and bought a little bunch of boxes that I plan to like open and enjoy someday, hopefully. What else do I really like? I like Civil War cards. I have these like Hearts of War cards from 1938 that are the cards that came out and they depicted war scenes from World War II and going up into World War II. My family is a Holocaust survivors, part of that. My family fought in the war. Those things have significant personal value to me as a collector. There are also these amazing sets that young people in social media doesn't talk about. You know what? One best set of the year for PSA this year, 1938 Horrors of War. That set.
Wow.
So in the older collector base, those things are extremely valued and enjoyed. Just younger collectors, social media collectors don't talk about it, don't know about it. Now, those things may never appeal. I think the Superman and the Batman and the Mickey Mouse and the Looney Tunes stuff I'm doing and the Marvel 1966 stuff, I don't understand how that wouldn't appeal to like so many people our age because we grew up with all of these characters and I think that they're connected and important to a lot of what we're doing. Obviously, some people just don't like superheroes and they prefer Japanese and all that sort of stuff. Like I totally get personal taste and preference, but I think a certain number of people would connect to those. I think some of these Horrors of War and Civil War cards are a little bit of a harder sell, but there's also a different group that can be into them, like history buffs, and they have each battle is talked about on the back. And I love reading them because I'm learning about history and I'm holding this thing that's almost 100 years old. And, it gives me a very different experience, let me put it that way, than holding a Pokemon card, particularly a modern Pokemon card, as much as I actually like that. And I enjoy that stuff too. So there are a lot of others. Middle Earth, there's a bunch of stuff. And part of my goal is I want to become really knowledgeable in all of these things. And there's also playing cards. I'm getting knowledgeable in playing cards. There are playing cards that are 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years old, with amazing kind of intricate hand-drawn art. Tarot reading cards. Like there's all sorts of things. And so my interests expand far beyond Pokemon, even though I love Pokemon and Pokemon is what started it for me again as an adult, kind of going down this rabbit hole. So.
No, that's really cool, man. So many things there that are brand new to me, and it's fascinating because I too have an interest in history and a lot of those things, and I think that very often, especially when you get into the space of being on YouTube and social media, you have a tendency to kind of pigeonhole yourself, whether consciously or subconsciously. You kind of pigeonhole yourself into like, this is what I do, and this is kind of the hole that I fit into. When in actuality, there's like this diverse range of hobbies and interests out there just within the trading card CCG, playing card realm that I think we very often overlook or we don't pursue because of that, right? And I'll be the first to admit that that's, you know, probably a downfall of mine as well, is that I haven't really explored all of these things because you just focus so much of your attention on this one thing, specifically Pokemon. But those are really interesting. I'm definitely going to check a lot of those out.
Yeah. I think that fine. I plug my Patreon. I'm starting to teach people about these things. So if people are interested in that, you know, I'm doing the research. I'm learning. I'm trying to get the best data. I'm reaching out to all these older card stores across the country and talking to them about all these things. So I think that the danger, right, is you have to think about the quality of your life, and you have to be clear about like how much of an addictive personality you have around this stuff. Because the danger of expanding and learning about more things is that you may really want to buy them, and then you're really not investing. You're actually have a problem. You know,
spoken like a true psychologist. It's
well,
so
and
true,
I made
man.
a video on it, right? Because I have that, so I have to watch that for myself, and so there's always that balance. But learning is so, I love learning. So even if you don't buy these things, I think just learning about the history, like if you're really passionate, I think that part of it comes from that. Like if it isn't just, and it's fine if this is mostly just about money, you know, for people in the chat or people out there, but it's like when you're really passionate, for me, where that passion really shines the brightest is actually not with the money. Although I'm very interested in finances and passionate about that too, but it shines with the history and the learning and the education and the, oh my gosh, that's so cool that exists. And there's so few of them. And I love the art, and I never saw that. That same thing that probably so many people here still feel for Pokemon, because they're still discovering things in Pokemon, you know? And I think that there's that too, is a lot of people here are newer, and you can take your time with Pokemon and discover all those great things in Pokemon and then move to some of these other things too. So.
Gosh, I forget the question almost at this point.
What other CCGs, TCGs are you into?
Yeah, I mean, all sorts of things, kind of like what you guys said. But yeah, I had to be cognizant and focused getting into this market. Just like I'm sure, like a lot of people watching, and perhaps you guys too. I have a fairly addictive personality, and I get hyper focused on something. And I want to optimize. I want to, you know, be the best and level up and get this and get that and invest in this and that. So I had to be very specific with what I got into. So of course Pokemon, but aside from that, Magic: The Gathering is actually a pretty heavy collective interest of mine, I guess we could say. Collection and investment, I guess you could couple those. As well as I really like the old original World of Warcraft cards. I just really like the artwork of them. It's from an investment standpoint, that is arguable at best. That is certainly just a me thing that I really enjoy. Sports cards. I really, really like football. Specifically, that's just something that I understand more. But from an interesting play potential, I'm sure a lot of people know, but the Major League Soccer over the last decade has seen a 30% increase in attendance and interest and sales. So that's very interesting, because I believe it's still very much so in its global infancy. So like picking up certain product or cards is definitely appealing and interests me, as well as Flesh and Blood and Weiss Schwarz. Of course, I don't talk about that too much on the channels. Again, the whole niche aspect there, but I don't know, maybe we'll branch out some more. But of all of those, to just give you guys like kind of pull the curtain back for Captain Zach Sparrow, I really like Magic: The Gathering, and I really like Weiss Schwarz. Yes, Flesh and Blood is a play, but just because it's so new, I don't really know that much about it. I'm not an expert of Flesh and Blood. I don't really know if anyone is at this stage in the game, but yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
No, that's cool, man. I've been getting a little bit more into Magic lately, sort of by proxy, because everybody around me, all of my business partners, are all super into Magic, and so they've been getting Nav into it. It's gonna be Alpha Nav here before too long. For me personally, I mean, Talking about like addictive personalities and worrying about that. Like for me personally, I've never had an addictive personality in the sense of I've always been very grounded, right? I feel I've always been very grounded. I think my downfall is I'm hyper competitive, right? So if I see that maybe there's somebody else out there that's like, hey, I really like this and you've got a bigger collection than me and I want to outdo that. That's my personal downfall. Or if I see, hey, you've got, you made this much this month in investing in X, Y, or Z, I want to be able to outdo that, right? And so it's like that hyper competitive nature in me is sometimes a similar downfall and very, very similar to almost the addictive personality where maybe you shouldn't be doing this, right? But because of that inner nature, it kind of pushes you over the edge. So that's where I have to rein it back in and be like, no, you need to, just do your thing, stick to what you like, stick to what you enjoy. But for me, it's always been Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. Pretty much. Jake was talking about the old scorecards. I really haven't gotten into Dragon Ball Super. One, because I didn't really care for Dragon Ball Super as the anime for the show. It just didn't have the same kind of vibe that Dragon Ball Z did. So that's where I like the scorecards way more. And that's where I really like to focus more of my collecting is on the old scorecards, because I did. As soon as I got out of Pokemon in around 2002, that was my next progression, was to Dragon Ball Z. And I actually to this day have more Dragon Ball Z scorecards from my childhood collection than I do Pokemon, interestingly enough. So but no, that's really good. I really like that. I think we'll go ahead and kind of wrap it up around here. I told you guys beforehand, 7-0 Cardinals playing tonight, baby, against the 6-1 Packers. We got to be ready for that. But I think that's really a really good place to leave off because what I love there is that both you guys have kind of pulled back the curtains, like Zach, in your words, and we get to see a little bit more of that. Kind of that fanciful side, right? That inner child. Jake seeing a lot of the cards that you're going at because you love them, you enjoy them, that you have a personal attachment to them. Zach, you as well. And to me, like a lot of it is that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, Jake, you've said it several times. If you buy something and you buy it overpriced, and it goes to zero, if you love it, you enjoy it, it doesn't matter. As long as you've maintained financial prudence, it really doesn't matter because you love it. So I really love that sentiment, and I think it's something that that needs to permeate a little bit more through the ether, right? So I'll turn it back over to you guys. Any last things that you'd like to say? Go ahead.
I think there's quite a bit of schemes and people calling out schemes and negativity and and a lot of stuff out in the social media YouTube world. I think that a large portion of it is healthy-ish, and it's going to sort of like resolve itself, and it's all part of bullish periods where there's just lots of opportunity and lots of people rushing to one space. And as Nav said, competitiveness is a huge, people being competitive, trying to make more money, outdo each other, whether it's through their content or through their business strategies, or, looking at other people who are making a lot of money and saying, I should be doing that. And then changing what or using like clickbait or different sort of like YouTube tactics to maneuver the algorithm in your favor. Like that stuff is all to be expected. The most important thing is just to like figure out how to sustainably enjoy yourself and go back to like what brought you here, what makes you happy, what you appreciate. You could take tastes, I think, of that drama, can be kind of fun and even and enjoyable if you come at it with like from a lighthearted place. There are also times where, when I feel like someone's getting hurt, that's where I get like, my like anger. I have anger and where my anger comes out. in that sort of protectiveness of like, these people are getting hurt, like this or that. But I know that I'm going to be a collector of sorts for the foreseeable future. My father is. It runs in the genes. I've always been this way. And it's just fun to do it with other people. And so for me, it's all about making that sustainable. And as I build a family and other sorts of things, making my YouTube habits, my Patreon, my collecting habits kind of fit within the other parts of my life, which are, of utmost value to me, that sort of thing. So I think coming back to that place for everyone, and for all of us, and what I really want to say to like YouTubers, like small YouTubers, we're all small YouTubers, we're all YouTubers who this isn't like, you don't make a lot of money doing this, you don't, but it becomes even more important to like do things in a way that you enjoy, that you find ethical, that you find that value, so that you don't burn out. And what I really want to say is try to resist the urge to take shortcuts or do things that don't feel, like up to each of your standards and to the standards of and this isn't directed at you guys as doing anything wrong. I just want everyone to know it's very, very clearly what I'm saying. I'm zero talking negatively about either of these two gentlemen here, but just as it's hard, and Nav and I were talking about this before the cameras went on, but it can be hard to sit, and particularly with that competitive nature that I have too, sit and watch people do things, certain things, and jump ahead or make more money. But having a certain ethical business standard of like what you're not willing to do, and having the patience and kind of the work ethic to stay within what you believe in and sort of your dream for your business or your dream for your content. And people who are doing that, like, we should all be super supportive of them, basically, even if we disagree with their arguments or their ideas, at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, the only thing I'd want to add at the end would be, Jake touched on it there, would just be the positivity in the community. This community is awesome. Like, I see a lot of the same comments and a lot of the same mods in different groups, and you guys are awesome. I do see, of course, negativity here and there, but you guys are better than that. Like, whenever I see like fighting and bickering, I would assume the type of people that watch these kind of channels, you're adults, and I'm not your mom, but you should act like an adult. So spreading toxicity and, oh, well, this person's a dummy because this PokeTuber said this, and he's looking at this through this lens, and this guy's looking at it through a rich man's lens. Like, we're all people at the end of the day. Putting someone in a box, like, there's no way you can do that. Life is so much more varied than that. So just be careful the type of content that you're consuming, and be careful with what you're saying with your mouth, because that stuff, it does impact people. There's a real human soul on the end of that channel. At the end of the day, like, I have to go to work. I have to support my wife and family, and these guys do as well. So just be nice and have fun with it. That's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks for having me on.
No, I love it. I love it, guys. And you're both absolutely right. It is a strong community. It's a fun community, or it can be a fun community to be in. There's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be some negativity. But in the end, I think if we kind of stick by each other and understand that even though Pokemon and like Pokemon YouTubers and all these things, it can seem like, because most of us, this is a lot of what we consume, right? There's a lot of the content that we consume. It can seem like everything exists in a vacuum, and to understand that there is a lot more outside of this, and there's a whole big world out there. But that I've said this from the beginning, we're really laying the bricks, we're laying the foundation right now for the future of this hobby, for TCGs in general. So how do we want that foundation to be? Do we want it to have tons of cracks in it, or do we want it to be strong? And ultimately, that's the choices that everyone, whether you're a YouTuber, whether you're just somebody that is watching a YouTuber, whether you're somebody going to conventions, to collecticons, whatever, if you're a part of this community, you are a brick in that foundation. And so you need to honestly recognize that as a responsibility. But gentlemen, I want to thank you guys so much, especially Zach for coming on last second. Truly appreciate you being here, and I love the conversation tonight. So I'm sure I'd like to have you on in the future for just a mano a mano podcast as well. But I'll give you guys one last little go here. Anything that you want to announce to everybody here in the chat, anything that you guys have upcoming, or socials, you guys have the floor.
Captain Zach Sparrow. You can find my relevant info in the description of my videos. You just YouTube it. I talk about Pokemon sometimes, and sometimes I get a little goofy. That's what I got.
I'm good with the with the shout out. Just a pleasure. It's nice being here with you guys. It was fun talking Pokemon. I've had some other life stuff going on and just personal stuff and people to be taken care of in my family the last few weeks. So I missed just like hanging out and talking Pokemon. I haven't made a video in a little while, so it's nice. Just like getting a chance to do it. And I like both of you guys a lot, and I just want you guys to keep making content and going on sort of your journeys and all those sorts of things. So thanks for having me, and it was nice spending a couple hours with you both.
Excellent. Again, big thank you guys, and a big thank you to everyone that joined in tonight, everybody in the live chat. I know we didn't get through all the questions, but I certainly appreciate all of you that joined in and the questions that you did ask. And other than that, guys, we will see you all next time. You have a fantastic rest of your week. We'll see you in the next episode.